All right, students, in the Intro to Psychology class with Dr. Tausman, my pleasure to welcome you. This is Unit 3, and we're going to be covering in this unit cognitive and developmental issues as well as learning issues. And so I think there's going to be a fair amount to cover here. It won't be quite as detailed as neuroscience, but more to write about, I think. And what you may want to do as a strategy here is you may wish to just use the agenda that I give you here and type in a unique way your detailed outline notes regarding the information I've shared with you here. So we're going to start with Piaget, and what I would ask you to do is look at the 4 or 5 minute YouTube video, pause the recording here, and then I'll talk about that YouTube video a bit and map it back to page 125 and 126 of your book that go over Piaget's qualitative theory. So pause the tape now, watch the recording, and then we'll get back to it here. Okay, so with that being said, according to Piaget, some basics you need to know. Piaget's theory was a cognitive theory of qualitative development. And what Piaget basically said is that children go through qualitatively different ways of thinking. That at each stage during the lifespan, they think qualitatively different. Now, Freud thought people thought qualitatively different, but he thought it was all based on psychosexual things. For Piaget, all these things that little children are doing are to learn about the cognitive world. And so for Piaget, very importantly, was the sensory motor stage, ages birth to 2. And during this stage, children put a lot of things in their mouth. They're trying to learn about the world by touching and feeling and using their senses. 2 things that they have during this stage: they have stranger anxiety, and the other thing that they don't really have you ever played the game Peekaboo? Peekaboo works really well with somebody in the sensory motor stage because when you're behind your hands, they don't think you exist. They actually lack what's called object permanence. There's another cool way to demonstrate this as well, that if you take a little baby that's maybe a couple months old and you put a spot of red paint on their nose and put them up in front of a mirror, they won't rub it off because they won't know they're looking at themselves. But if you do this by the age of 2, they'll know they're staring at themselves and they have mastered object permanence. So qualitatively different ways of thinking than adults. The pre-operational period. This is the period where pretend play, playing with dolls, all this stuff happens. Egocentrism. Now, if you call one of your friends egocentric, that's kind of the idea of saying you're very self-centered. That's not what it's talking about here. If you watch the video, when you're egocentric, you can't imagine what the world is like from somebody else's point of view. And so in that particular sense, it's egocentric because you can only see the world through your particular vision of the world. And so the 3 mountain task actually maps into that quite well during this egocentric realm. And you do a lot of pretend play. The abstract, which is covered below, basically is all about pretend play, and that's very much Piagetian thinking there, that you learn about the world by thinking about things in qualitatively different ways, and this is the way of it. Now, a lot of you wrote down this was Vygotsky, but Vygotsky and Piaget are a little bit similar, but I'll explain the difference in a couple of minutes here, and don't worry, you won't lose too much credit on this. I think only 1 or 2 of you got this exactly correct. So pre-operational, a lot of pretend play, dress up happens, playing with dolls, because that's how you're learning about the world. During concrete operations, you're learning about the world by doing simple addition and subtraction tasks. You learn that things, if you can see them and measure them, that they work in a particular way. They do a lot of conservation tasks. Your book talks about some of them, or maybe it doesn't. Yeah, concrete operations. You basically learn about the world. You learn how to do simple math tasks. If 3 plus 2 equals 5, then 5 minus 2 equals 3. You learn that even though you pour a jar of liquid from a tall container to a short container, that it still has the same amount in it. Kids aren't able to do this during the concrete operation stage. It's only on the last stage, formal operations, where they learn to think in kind of scientific ways. You can use logic. You can understand democracy and freedom. So what I'd ask you to do here is read through the abstract, obviously, and the abstract is very much a lot of studies done that kids learn by doing play-based behavior. So it's very much a Piagetian abstract. And so what I would ask you to do is maybe type out in an outline way under A and B kind of your summary of all the comments I've made that kind of map to this in a way, shape, or form. Finally, I needed to cover with Piaget things about how we learn. And the important term for Piaget were terms of assimilation versus accommodation and schemas, page 125 of your book. If you see something that has 4 legs and has hair on it, and somebody says, oh, that's a dog to you, then if they bring another animal into the room and the animal starts meowing, you might still say that's a dog. Why? Because you have learned that anything with 4 legs that has hair on it is a dog, but we know that this situation is a situation of a cat, so you will have to accommodate and change your way of thinking. So when we accommodate, we have to change our way of thinking. When we assimilate, we simply get new information in. If we learn that these are all examples of animals, and animals are things that are alive, then you learn new information and you assimilate it in. The final thing I wanted to share with you was, I know a lot of you are at Mary Baldwin College, obviously. I have a formal operations example of this for you. As some of you know, I was very big on Shakespeare growing up at Ohio State and then SUNY Binghamton. I think I read you the soliloquy and the cognitive bit on how I memorized a skit with this, or a soliloquy with this. It was very interesting. I took my first Hamlet class or Shakespeare class in high school, barely understand the words of Shakespeare, but learned it was very much a Freudian type of play. And then I went to college and I took 2 classes in college. We covered Hamlet again. I was so happy the teacher said, oh yeah, this is a Freudian play. Hamlet's in love with his mom, Gertrude, and that's the basis of it. I got into my final class with Professor Spinrad at the Ohio State University, and she said on the first day of class, we're going to talk about Hamlet in today's class. And the first thing I want to tell all of you, anybody who thinks that this play is a Freudian play, you're completely wrong. It's a Judeo-Christian play that plays on Judeo-Christian themes. Of course, when she told me this, I was very, very upset because I had learned the whole Freudian gig. I was a psychology guy, and I believed in this fully. I went in, debated, and argued with her. Of course, I always had to change my mind. I had to accommodate in this particular situation so that I could understand better what she was saying. In fact, both interpretations are potentially correct here. So hopefully this helps you out with Piaget and the ideas behind it. Thanks. Bye-bye.